We have finally made it. 8 episodes over the course of a month and a half. No, just over a month. We did it, okay? That's all that matters. Last division of the grading the NFL draft series. This one, the AFC South. I'm not sure how many of you have been waiting around for this one. I'm not sure how many AFC South fans I have following me right now, but if you are one of those people, thank you so much for sticking around and waiting to see what I think of your team's draft. And at the end of this video, for everybody else, I'll have the full rankings because I know it's kind of, having it being broke up by division, it's hard to keep track of where teams rank. And so at the end, I'm going to have every team's ranking 1 through 32. We'll quickly go through it, kind of give an overlap of, what I thought and look at how the divisions fared. Without further ado, let us get started with the AFC South, starting off with the Houston Texans. And I thought the Houston Texans had a very, very good draft. And they started it off by taking Jaden Higgins, one of their first wide receivers out of Iowa State, in the second round after trading out of that 25 spot with the Giants. Great move to trade out of the first round and still pick up a very, very good playmaker in Higgins, who's a big, tall, lengthy receiver that's deceptively fast, ball winner. That is what he hangs his hat on. It's the ability to make 50-50 balls, 75-25 balls. Like, he is unbelievable at going up and getting the football. It's just truly unbelievable what he's able to do as a route runner. He's not this Houdini-esque level route runner like we'll get into with his teammate. But what he does really well. He is going to be your X receiver. He's going to be the guy that you go to when you need a catch. Whether or not he's open, you're going to trust him to come down with the ball. And I think that's exactly what the Texans, maybe not exactly what the Texans need, but him and Nico Collins being on the same field, DBs will not be able to contest those passes. CJ Stroud's life just became a billion times easier with this selection alone, not talking about their next 2 picks either. So with their second one, they get Ariante Irsary out of Minnesota, tackle, who I thought that was, second rounder. That's exactly where I had him, is that mid-second round. I think he's a good player. I think he does have to, fine-tune some things, but as a left tackle, he pass pros really well. He's technically sound. He's not out of this world athlete, but he does do a really good job of hand placement, hand timing. Those punches are not, he doesn't get out over himself, right? Which is what we see happen a lot with young tackles, and where they get hurt is where, we'll see an edge rusher throw a ghost move. They bite on it, get out on their toes, and then all of a sudden the edge defender grabs their hand, swim, rip, the rest, right? So Irsary does a really good job at just staying within himself and playing, knees above toes and staying straight up while being able to absorb contact. He's got a solid anchor. He's not a great run defender. I was underwhelmed with his play strength in that department. So that's something to look out for. But I think, getting that kind of player on the left side of the line of scrimmage for CJ Stroud after trading away Laramie Tunsil to Washington, I think that was a good pickup, good value as well. And then in the third round, they get Jalen Noel, and I had Jalen Noel as a second-round pick, an early second-round pick, I believe. I think this was a 26, 27 spot difference on my big board. And, with Tank Dell likely being out for a majority of this season, this is the perfect pick as a replacement and, in the short term to maintain that playoff run. And then when Tank Dell comes back, whether or not he's, 100% himself, you now have assurances, or you now have insurance that, if he's not, you still have a fantastic player in Noel who works really well underneath, even has this speed, which was a little bit surprising after hearing people talk about him. When I watched him, he's got a great downfield threat ability. And so I was something I was really intrigued by. I think that as a route runner, he's fantastic. After the catch, outside of his speed, I don't think he really makes anybody miss. And I think his hands are just okay. So I think that, he's a before the catch guy, right? He is going to make sure he's open. He's going to dust guys. And he's going to set himself up where he's not going to have to make so many moves to, get those extra yards. He's just going to be a yak threat in the sense that he's going to set himself up off the break of the route to get separation and space for him to work, right? So I think that he's going to be a valuable piece to the Houston Texans offense as they try to, retool, get back to where they were 2 years ago. Jalen Smith was literally the next corner I had on my watch list. Did not get to him. He's a corner out of USC. This was the first guy that I didn't watch that was taken in the draft. And I was so disappointed too because I try to see how far I can get, with watching all of the players. And this year I felt really good having watched 260 guys. But Jalen Smith going in the late third round with those comp picks, I was like, I was so mad at myself because I was debating whether or not I should try to squeeze him in, right before the draft started. I opted against it clearly, and I pick 107 or whatever it was. I got caught. Woody Marks in the fourth round. I think that was a little bit early for Woody Marks for me. He's a good pass catcher. I don't think he's a great running back. Playmaker, not so much. I just didn't think he did a ton well. I had a late fifth, early sixth on him. I just thought that he could have been, there could have been other running backs that that the Texans could have taken that would have been more impactful on day one and still had better upside. So give that one a 2. Jalen Reed in the 6th round, that's a 5 for me. I had a late 3rd, early 4th on Jalen Reed, and I think that the 2 Penn State safeties really went under the radar this year for whatever reason. Winston obviously for injuries, but for Reed, I was a little bit surprised that more guys weren't talking about him. I thought that he played, a well-rounded style of football. He was, he's good at a bunch of things, not great at any one thing. But that's kind of what you need as a rotational safety, somebody who can wear a bunch of different hats and be sufficient, right? Somebody you can rely on, and I think that's exactly what he is. As a special teamer, he's going to make the team. He's going to make so many plays in special teams, and so not only are you getting somebody who can be a great rotational safety for you, but you're also getting a great special teamer. So I gave this a 5 in terms of value, in terms of fit with D'Amico, and the ability to be able to play a bunch of different spots in a D'Amico defense. I think he's going to be huge value pickup for the Texans, and they get him in the 6th round. Graham Mertz in the 6th for me was just, there are other quarterbacks I would have gone with. I had a UDFA grade on Mertz, and he goes in the 6th round. I thought even Quinn Ewers and Curtis Rourke would have been better picks when you're looking for a backup quarterback. Mertz to me just doesn't have, floor-wise, he doesn't have the arm, right? And I thought that given what we saw on tape in his history at year 1 in Florida, and then his first season or his starting season in Wisconsin, he's not a great processor either. He makes a lot of poor decisions. I will say he was better early this season with his decision making, and so if he hadn't have gotten hurt, who knows what it would have looked like later in the year with more reps. But I thought there were better quarterbacks available. Didn't get to Keontae Hamilton out of Rutgers. Luke Leahy out of Iowa, the tight end. I had a 7th round grade on him. I thought this was about where he should have gone. So, as a tight end from Iowa, he is not. Do not even compare him to your Noah Fants and George Kittles and Sam Laportas. He's not that, right? He is much less of an athlete. He's got okay hands, but other than that, he's just going to be your tight end 3, rotational type guy, right? Overall, it's a 3-2-9 for the Texans. Like I said, very solid draft. They got 2 really good playmakers. They helped CJ out a lot. and they pick up Jalen Reed in the 6th round. Huge fan of that pick. I think that's going to be the one, even given the other picks that we look back on and wonder, how they got him where they did. Next up is the Indianapolis Colts, and they're in a little bit of an interesting spot. And so I didn't love what they did in their draft just because I thought that the division is obviously there for the taking, and taking Anthony Richardson 2 years ago, try and set him up to succeed as best as you can. Their first pick absolutely did that. Tyler Warren, I think, is a great fit for what they want to do offensively under Steichen. Having that big body that can kind of you need to get him the ball and let him do his thing. He's not, and I mentioned this when I talked about Colson Loveland versus Tyler Warren and my first round draft breakdown. I had Colson Loveland as a better tight end because I just think he plays the tight end position better. But after the catch, Tyler Warren is I think much better as a player than Colson Loveland. And fit-wise, I think fits what Indianapolis needs much more than Colson Loveland did. And so I think it worked out really well for both the Bears and the Colts. But with Steichen's ability to just create manufactured touches for players on his offense, I think that Warren is going to benefit greatly from that. He's just so good with the ball in his hands, especially for a guy his size. So I think this is going to be a very beneficial pick, and it's a big target. He's got good hands, so Anthony Richardson's accuracy won't hurt him as much. Now we've seen some really bad throws where even Tyler Warren and his pretty wide catch radius aren't going to help. But it's something, right? And then their next 2 picks, they go defense for both of them. The first one being JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State, and the 3rd round pick being Justin Wally, the corner out of Minnesota. And I thought both of these were massive reaches. I had a 4th round grade on Tuimoloau. He's a good athlete, but he didn't show great explosiveness on tape. He didn't show he didn't show good power. He didn't really show an ability to win quickly, other than a poor pass set by the offensive lineman or the quarterback getting way too deep in his drop. Like, if you go back and just watch JTT's highlight tapes from this season, there were, you could count on your hand the times that he actually won the rep without some sort of help from a missed assignment from an offensive lineman or a quarterback, like I said, taking too deep of a drop. So I just don't think he's that good of a player to be taken in the 2nd round. I guess you like the tools, and Ballard is a tools drafter, and the athleticism and that, Penn State game 3 years ago was phenomenal, right? But when you actually look at that game, it was a lot of him being a good instinctual player in the pass game, right? It wasn't the fact that he was this elite pass rusher, because I don't think he is. And I think that they're going to regret that pick. I think it's going to be the same way with Wally. Now, Wally's a little bit different because Wally technically is a very solid corner, but he just doesn't have it athletically, and he's super small. So I think that's an awful combo, right? To be a average to maybe below average athlete, but also be on the smaller side. What are you going to have him do? He's just not going to be able to. He's not going to be able to man guys up in a press man type way. He can't get physical with them because they're just going to overpower him, and I don't think he's going to be able to keep up. So he's going to have to play He's going to have to play an off zone. And I thought his eyes were fine. I wasn't super impressed. Where I was impressed with Wally was his ability to stick with guys in man coverage given his deficiencies. But that was in the Big Ten against some, Minnesota's schedule. They play like your Iowas and your Nebraskas and your Wisconsins. Those are their built-in rivals that they play every year. The NFL, you're not going to see guys like that. Every week there are going to be guys that are their wide receiver 3s are going to be better than anything you saw in college. So I don't know if I trust his ability to just translate to the NFL, which is why I had, I think, a late 5th, early 6th on him, rather than where the Colts took him in the 3rd round. And it's kind of the same way with Jalen Travis. Jalen Travis was a guy I got to later in the cycle, and so I had an idea about him, and I I like Jalen Travis in the 4th round more than I like JTT in the 2nd or Justin Wally in the 3rd. But for me, Travis was still a late 5th, early 6th round pick. So it was still a massive reach. Now with Travis, there's at least some things to like that can be translatable to the NFL. One mainly being his explosiveness out of his stance. His kick step is super powerful. He generates a lot of distance and is able to cut off angles from defensive ends, which is really nice. That's something that you want to see out of tackles, especially if they have the athletic capabilities to do so. Now, my issue with him is that, yes, that was great, but he didn't really have the foot speed to mirror when guys were able to get back inside. So, yes, he created that depth and that width, but if guys countered inside when they saw that, he struggled to get back in front of them, which is called mirroring, and get those hands on him. So I was, maybe one's a little bit harsh here because it is day 3. And I was, I had the ones from JTT and Justin Wally in front of him, but I didn't love the process here because there were just better tackles in my opinion that were still on the board, like Marcus and Bow, and I guess 2 different players, right? So maybe don't compare them. But he was still on the board. Some other guys. I'm just trying to look at my board real quick to see. Logan Brown, I thought was better. Chase Lunt, even Cameron Williams, I had graded higher than Travis. Like I just thought that there were guys that could do what he did at a higher level, and they had better upside based off of what I saw. But their last 4 picks were phenomenal in my opinion. DJ Giddens in the 5th round, he was one of my favorite running backs in this class. I think I had him as like RB5. Super explosive, sneaky athlete. I think that a lot of people didn't realize how good of an athlete he was, and he plays with good power. He runs behind his pads well. He's not much of a threat in the passing game, but he is a very good runner. Has solid vision. I was surprised he fell to the 5th round. And I'm also a little bit disappointed that he's now got to share a backfield with Jonathan Taylor because of how bell cowish Jonathan Taylor is. And maybe this was the pick that was like, hey, maybe we don't need to give Jonathan Taylor 35 carries a game anymore. Then Riley Leonard in the 6th round. And I know they have Daniel Jones now, and I know they have Anthony Richardson, but if neither one of those guys works out and they just need a spot starter for a little bit, I really like this Riley Leonard pick. I think Leonard was a guy who at Duke specifically really impressed me early in his career, and then he, fractured his tibia, I think is what it was, in that Notre Dame game. Just a pointless injury. And then transfers to Notre Dame, and I was super impressed with him all over again. I think he does a really good job commanding the offense. I think his post-snap processor is really solid. And then as an athlete, he didn't really lose anything, right? When after that injury. So that's kind of what you look for after one of those injuries to a quarterback who kind of in his season at Duke really relied on that athletic ability. So I really like this pick. I had a 5th round grade on Leonard. I think that, getting him around later, I think there was really good value there. And then they get Tim Smith the pick later. Tim Smith is the defensive tackle out of Alabama in that loaded defensive line room. I really like Smith for his value here. I think that he's a powerful, interior defensive lineman. Not a great athlete, holds his own well, can but can anchor really well. Defeat double teams. So I think that's going to be a beneficial pick just as a rotational guy for the Colts. And then Hunter Waller in the 7th round. I had a 5th round grade on him. I think Waller can be a menace in the box. To go in the 7th round to get a guy who, if this was 2013, is probably a 3rd or a 4th round pick just because of how physical he is and how well he can play the run from that 10 yards box safety position. As a cover guy, he's got a lot of work to do. He did show some flashes, but I think the consistency is just really what you need. But I do think this is a player that in the 7th round could potentially be a starter. And I know that's kind of wild to say because I only had a 5th round grade on him, but it's that potential, right? It's not that I think he will, but it's that I do think that there are the tools there where he could become a starter. if all of these other things work out, right? So overall, I think it was a 2.56 for the Indianapolis Colts. The back half of the draft really saved them from those first three of those first 4 picks. This was on track to be, after the 4th round, the worst class in the draft. But taking Giddens, taking Leonard, Smith, and Waller in the 5th through 7th rounds really helped balance that out. It's still not a great grade, but it's more you can stomach it a little bit better at that 2.56. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they were the stars of the show early on day 1, trading up for Travis Hunter. Now, I don't necessarily agree with what they had to give up to go get him, but I love the player, and I can't lie. I think that he is an instant impact day 1. In terms of wide receiver, I thought he was the best wide receiver in this class. In terms of corner, I thought he was the best corner in this class. I mean, it looks like he's going to play wide receiver. I'm fine with that, right? Like, I think that he's a better wide receiver than he is a corner. Just because I think that as a corner, he struggled in man coverage, and he just really relied on his instincts and his ball catching ability to make up. He just uses athleticism, right? As a wide receiver, he does all those things super well. Like, I think in and out of cuts, like, he's going to have to refine his route running. He just didn't have to do much of it just because when you're a better athlete than everybody you have to go against, you're going to cut some corners in terms of your route running, and he absolutely did. But it's something he's going to be able to work on at the NFL level, and he's got some of the best hands that you'll ever see. His ability to, and he's not a big guy either. Like, when we talked about Jaden Higgins earlier, like, that's a big dude. I think Jaden Higgins is 6'4". Travis Hunter is not 6'4", but he's got super soft hands, great ball winning skills, unbelievable. And then he can just flat out make guys miss after the catch. Like, after the catch, he's special, right? So you're gonna get that kind of playmaker to pair with BTJ. That's a 5 for me. Even though they had to give up more than I wanted them to, or more than I would have wanted to, I should say. That's a 5, absolutely. Then they get Caleb Ransaw, the safety out of Tulane in the 3rd round, and this was just way too early for me. I don't see Ransaw being a starter. I don't really even see him being like a rotational guy. Really, he was a special teamer, in my opinion, based off of what I saw. I had a late 5th, early 6th round grade on him. That's just a big reach for me, especially when you're doing it on day 2. Then they go get Wyatt Milam in the 3rd round. This was a 2. I had more of a mid to late 4th round grade on him, so it's not a super big reach. I like Wyatt. I think that he's going to play guard in the NFL. He's not long enough. His arms are just not long enough to play tackle. But I thought that as a pass protector, it wasn't really the length that was the problem. It was his feet. I thought they had some issues staying in front of defenders. In the run game is where I thought that he kind of shined. So hopefully he's able to maintain that, right? Keep that consistency in the run game while also getting better as a pass protector. I just thought it was a little bit early for me. And then Bayshul Tootin in the 4th round, the running back out of Virginia Tech, super, super fast, like just quick feet, a small guy as well. So when he's running, it looks like he's running super fast, but he's not really covering much ground. And then all of a sudden you look up and he's gone. Like, there's just nobody within him. I explain that so poorly. So I'm going to try to figure out a better way to explain it other than, nope, I can't. He's just fast. Super short legs, though. He is super fun player. He actually has really good contact balance for his size because he is more stout. There was the run against Miami, I think is what it was, where he just shrugs off a linebacker and bursts for a touchdown. I think it was like a 45, 50-yard touchdown. That's kind of what he is. I think down-to-down consistency is his biggest hurdle. There were a lot of plays where he would miss holes. He would get tackled a little too easily. So for him, it's just about how does he become that home run hit, maybe not home run hitter, but that explosive playmaker every single down, or at least have that potential. It just felt like that there were a handful of times that you could be able to count on him to give you that in a game, but it wasn't going to be every play. So it's just fixing that. Then Jack Kaiser in the 5th round. It's not that I don't like Kaiser. I think that he can be a really solid rotational linebacker. But that's down the line. Like, I don't think that's immediate. I think he's going to have to work at that. I had a 6th to a 7th round grade on him. He's going to be a good special teamer, so you at least get that. I don't know. I don't hate it. Like, it's the 5th round. Kaiser's a solid player for what he is at this point. So I just a little bit of a reach, so I give it a 2. I didn't watch Jalen McLeod or Rayon Lane. Unfortunate. But I did watch Jonah Monheim, and I had a 5th round grade on him. Thought about giving this a 5, but then I was like, it's day 3. I don't know if I'm gonna. It wasn't quite enough of a disparity between where I had him on my board and where they picked him for me to quite give it that 5. And I'm just now realizing that LaQuint Allen and Jonah Monheim were apparently picked at the same pick. That was a mistake on my part. I think LaQuint Allen was like 4 picks later. But I really like Monheim, especially in the 7th round. He had a rough game against Michigan, but I thought otherwise he had some pretty solid tape. Pretty consistent player overall. He's not going to be a starter for you, but you're going to ask him to fill in, when one of your guards gets hurt, or when you want to go, you want to go big and you need another offensive lineman out there. I think he can be that 6th guy that comes in, but that's kind of his ceiling. I don't know if he'll ever be a starter in the league just because of his play strength and his balance. But he can spot start if you need him to. You just don't want him to be a long-term guy. And then LaQuint Allen in the 7th round. It's about where I would, this is where I had LaQuint Allen and where I felt comfortable taking him. He's not a great running back. In fact, he's not really a running back at all. He's more of a pass catcher, right? He's kind of where he thrives is his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, make some guys miss in the open field and get you some run after the catch. Other than that, he's nothing super special. So I think overall it was a solid draft for the Jaguars. I think they could have done a better job. Like, yes, you get Travis Hunter at 2, but you also lose out on that 2nd round pick. You lose out on a 1st round pick next year. They didn't really make it count in the 3rd round, doing that trade. So I thought there was a little bit of a missed opportunity there to get, infinitely better. Maybe not infinitely, but get exponentially better, which they kind of need to do. New head coach, new GM. Overall, I thought it was a 3, so I thought it was, a very just solid draft. Nothing too crazy. They do get a, elite playmaker in Travis Hunter. So you can't complain about that, right? You come away with, the best player in the class. You're always happy about that. Finally, the last team, 32 out of 32. The Tennessee Titans, the team that picked first, we talk about last. We'll talk about that 1st round pick, that number 1 overall pick, Cameron Ward out of Miami, out of Washington State, and out of Incarnate Word. Yes, he played at 3 different schools. And did he also play at a JUCO? No, I don't think so. I think it was just 3 schools, if I have that right. But I was familiar with Cam Ward back in his Wazoo days. Heck, I had heard of him when he was playing at Incarnate Word. Follow Bill Connolly on Twitter if you want to, be up to date with FCS happenings. But Cam Ward is a phenomenal quarterback. I really do think so. He might not have been as good as the top 3 or 4 guys last year, but he was far and away the best quarterback in the class this year. And I think that he's got, top 12 potential in his repertoire. His ability to play the quick game. He's got a decent arm. He reads the defense well, I think, and he plays, RPO. He's the best RPO quarterback that I think we've seen. It's relatively new, but the way he plays it, JT O'Sullivan said this about him. He plays it like a shortstop. Like he's got all the different arm angles. He's able to fit the ball through tight windows. He reads the defense super well. And the thing that Ward's got to get better about, before I get into the negative, actually, let me say another positive. The way he holds himself and carries himself on the football field is exactly what you want from a starting quarterback. He's cool, calm, collected. He's not going to get rattled by the moment. I do think it hurts his footwork sometimes, but that's something that's going to be cleaned up at the NFL level. I know it. But what I was going to get to is every once in a while, it's kind of like a once a game thing. He'll have a play where he just makes the dumbest decision. And it is essentially unexplainable because he'll throw a frozen rope over the middle, 35 yards down the field, the play before it. It's like the Cal game. And then he'll run around, and off his back foot, he'll launch a ball into triple coverage and still overthrow the receiver, and it gets taken back for a pick six. Man, I don't know. It's unexplainable. You literally cannot explain what he was doing there. But there's so much good that I really don't care about that once a game. Now you want that to be maybe half a time a game, so it's only 8 times a season. But listen, man, he's got a gunslinger mentality, and you're gonna have to live with some of those mistakes because he's gonna be often a lot more times that he's gonna be wrong. So I thought that was a phenomenal pick for Tennessee. They're going to set themselves up for success with this new regime with Brian Callahan at head coach. You already got your bookend left tackles. I think that you're in a really good spot now. And then in the second round, they get Olufemi Oladejo out of UCLA. He's a raw edge rusher. Hadn't played the position much. Was more of a linebacker. The physical traits, though, I fell in love with when I was watching him. And I had him at like 62 overall, so it's right about the range that I would want to take him. Such a fun player. I really do think that, because he's relatively new to football, he's young, he will be a guy that we look at in a couple of years that hit the developmental path that we look for with guys that have those kinds of traits. And he will be a close to a double-digit sack player at some point in his career, and I do think he surpasses that, down the line. And then one of my favorite players in the entire class in the third round, and Kevin Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State. Listen, if he didn't tear his ACL, there's a good chance I would have had him like level with Malachi Starks in terms of safeties. I love watching this guy play. He does not miss tackles, and he comes down with ferocity. This guy plays the game of football the way it is meant to be played. He is a good cover. He's a good cover safety, but more importantly, he's a great leader, has a great attitude. I mean, James Franklin spoke so highly of him. Watching him drop to the third round because of an ACL injury was very unfortunate, because I think that when he comes back, he is going to be a playmaker. I think he's going to be everywhere on the field. He will. I don't think he'll ever be a great cover guy. He's more of a get me downhill and let me go to work. But I think he can be good enough where, we talk about him as a top 10 safety in the league. I fully believe in that kind of potential with Winston. He's just too good to let fall to the third round. I was so surprised by that. And then I got Jim Dike in the fourth round, and he was he was absolutely one of my guys in terms of the wide receiver position. He was a top 10 for me, I believe. He really reminded me of Jalen Noel. Literally, the way these guys ran routes and played the position was so similar. And people had 3-round different grades on the players. I had a 2nd-round grade on DK. It was a late second. There was not much separation between Noel and him. I think DK, as a route runner, is so nuanced and so fluid in his movements. Great foot speed, just a fluid mover in and out of cuts. He's got to get better at the catch point. That was the big downside with him, is that he just doesn't do a great job at being consistent, bringing in some tough passes. And then after the catch, I'd like a little bit more out of him. But in the same way like Noel, he gets open and he's got speed, right? This is a guy that Ward is going to gel with, and I fully believe that. I really love this pick. And then they get Gunnar Helm with their 2nd, 4th round pick, and Helm was my tight end 4, I think. Well, tight end 3, really, because Harold Fannin Jr. is not much of a tight end, in my opinion. But Helm is he was so underrated as a tight end. I couldn't believe that people had Mason Taylor above him. When I watch Gunnar Helm, he blocks really well. He's super reliable hands. He moves really well, and especially in that short to intermediate where you want your tight ends to be able to work. Great hands. Like after the catch, I was like, holy crap! He's got some juice. Like he makes guys miss. Like third down blanket. I mean, Quinn Ewers relied on this guy so many times. And he, credit to the Titans, they get him in the 4th round, and you pair him with a guy like Chig, where Chig is more of that, H-back type, almost Harold Fannin type tight end, and you let Gunnar Helm be that true Y. You've got a really good 1-2 punch at that position to pair with the rest of the offense. And I think all of a sudden you're looking at this retooled Titans offense, and they're looking pretty solid. I think they're going to be an underrated unit, especially because they get Alec Iomanner with their 3rd, 4th round pick. This was a guy I had a absolute certain 2nd round grade on, and he's like my number 40 overall player. Like that is how high I was on him. And he goes in the 4th round. I was like, how is this possible? How is this possible? Because when you watch Iomanner play, he has some of the best release packages I've ever seen from a college prospect. He literally does it all. Any type of press that you show him, any type of coverage you show him, he can get off of it no problem. I would like his route tree to be a little bit more extensive. He's not an elite athlete. I don't think he's even a great athlete, but he's got good hands. And he even showed the ability to give you something after the catch, which, given that he's not a great athlete, I was like, sure, I'll take that, right? Like, I mean, to me, it felt like this is your prototypical X receiver that you are going to line up on the line of scrimmage, and he is going to take some beatings, but he's also going to give beatings, and he's a great run blocker too. And I think it's the NFL overlooking a guy who's just not an elite athlete. Like that just feels because he does everything else so well. Like the routes that he does run, he runs them super crisply. He's just got to add a few more things to his repertoire in that area. I couldn't believe it. Jackson Slater out of Sacramento State. It goes in the 5th round. I thought that was a good value pick. Slater's more of a move guy. Callahan and the Titans were like middle of the road, I if I remember correctly, in terms of their outside zone usage. So Slater will be able to slot in if they need him to, or if they want to focus on more of that outside zone type scheme. But as is, like he's just going to need to work on refining himself, pass protection wise, just strength. He played at the FCS level, so there's just a little bit of a disparity there. There's a pretty big difference in terms of that play strength, and I didn't think that he had it in the same way that don't do this now, that a Gray Zabel had it at North Dakota State. So, but a good pick there in the 5th round. Didn't watch Marcus Harris. I watched every single Khalil Mullings game that he's ever played. Even when he was a linebacker at Michigan, I watched him. So I am very familiar with what Khalil Mullings brings to the table, and he is your straight up bruiser. Like he's not going to make guys miss. He's not going to be explosive at all. Like he's probably got like 4.6 speed. Like he's not fast, but he is a pain in the ass to bring down. Oh my gosh. He's got thick legs. He keeps them moving. He runs behind his pads really well. He absorbs contact, great contact balance. Literally, like he's such an interesting running back because he doesn't do many running back things well, but you can't tackle him. His vision, there are flashes there of, okay, he's starting to figure it out. Like there's like he'll press a gap, to set up a lateral movement, a jump cut. There we go. I don't know why my brain's tweaking right now. A jump cut to another hole to then press up and hit that gap. So there's something there. It's just about developing that. And I never think that he'll be more than like at his best an RB2 that gets, short yardage carries when you need to wear a defense down. He's that type of guy. Other than that, like he will never be a starter. He'll never be a bell cow simply because he just doesn't have the explosiveness and the acceleration. Unless, he has some miraculous athletic improvement. I don't think it'll happen. But overall for the Titans, this was a home run draft. 3-8-8. Just, it does not, you couldn't ask for a better draft than that, especially given the fact that you're taking your quarterback of the future. So, bravo, Tennessee, best draft in the division, and you'll see in a second, but it is the third best draft of this draft class based off of my ratings. So, and they're not super, like I mentioned, they're not intricate. It's an average of all of the players I have grades for, NAs. I'm not going to penalize you for taking a guy I didn't watch, but I'm also not going to, give you any benefit for a guy I didn't watch. Without further ado, here are our 1 through 32 draft class rankings. So, if you recall watching my NFC South video, the Bucs had a 5 or 6 person draft. They had a 6-person draft. I watched 5 guys, and they took a bunch of. They literally took 5 my guys. And they got a 4.5 because literally every single player was either a 4 or a 5. And that's a damn near perfect draft because they got positions of need. They took really damn good players, and they set themselves up to win the NFC South again. There's not much more you can ask for. And then the Steelers in second place with a 4.25. I thought they had a really good draft as well. They drafted need. They got it at good value. They set themselves up to be a solid team. Still don't have the quarterback of the future, even though I like Will Howard, and I gave it a 5 because I had a 3rd-round grade for him, so I kind of had to. But I don't think he's the quarterback of the future necessarily. I think he can be a good starter this year, but other than that, wouldn't bank on him being around for too long in that starting role. Titans, as you see, are 3rd. Panthers are 4th. I thought they did a really good job setting themselves up to use the end of last year as a springboard to maybe a frisky playoff team this season. The Chargers, 3-7-1, a tenth of a point behind them. Giants, 3-6-6. Man, if Jackson Dart can pan out, because this is even given the fact that I hated the Dart pick, like they had a 3-6-6, so they had a really solid draft otherwise. The Chiefs with the 3-5-7, the Ravens with the 3-5, the Commanders with the 3-5, and then the Eagles with the 3-4-4. Those are 4 teams that had really good drafts that are already really good and did not need really good drafts. Or the rest of the league did not need them to have really good drafts. The Cowboys and the Rams share the 3-3-3. The Cardinals and the Browns are sharing the 3-3. The Texans and the Saints, 3-2-9. Then the Packers stand alone with their 3-2. The Patriots with the 3-1-3, as well as the Seahawks with the 3-1-3. The Jaguars with the 3. The Bills with the 2-8-8. The Niners with the 2-7-7. The Dolphins with the 2-7-5. The Raiders with the 2-6-7. The Jets with the 2-6-7 as well. The Lions with the 2-6. The Colts with the 2-5-6. And then you have your D draft classes, if you will. The Falcons with the 2-3. The Vikings with the 2-2-5. The Broncos with a 2-2. The Bears with a 2-1-3. And then you have your F draft with the Cincinnati Bengals. They had my least favorite draft by far. I didn't think they added very many players of good value. I don't think they took good players in general. So they're at the bottom. Now, when you look at, in totality, the divisions and look at how the divisions fared, I want to focus on the AFC North first because you have the Steelers with a 4-2-5, the Ravens with a 3-5, and the Browns with a 3-3. So they all had top half drafts. And you have the Bengals at 32 with the worst draft by far. And their first round pick isn't even signed yet. If that doesn't show you, where the Bengals are in their front office, then I don't know what does. Now, the NFC South did a really good job of setting themselves up for success at the top. The Saints also finished in that top half, so they did a really good job as well. But then you had the Falcons, and with the Falcons, it was a combination of asset management, as well as taking players just I thought were not worthy of those picks. So I think that they hurt themselves a little bit, especially for a team that should be in contention. I think that the other teams around them got better. Now, the Saints won't be very good just because they're not a good roster, but I think they set themselves up for the future a little bit better. We just talked about the AFC South, so I won't touch on them again. Overall, they did a pretty solid job. They didn't have anybody that bottomed out, but they also, I think the Jags were the worst with the 3. I know that was the Colts with the 2-5-6. So they didn't have a D draft. They had 2 middle drafts with the Jags and Texans, and then the Titans are obviously third. You had the AFC West with the Chargers and Chiefs knocking it out of the park. The Broncos coming up the rear with a very poor draft, in my opinion, especially with the value of those picks. And then the Raiders with the 2-6-7. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. They're 24th, yes, but I think that a 2-6-7 is like fine. The NFC East did a really good job, I thought. The Giants with the 3-6-6, and then the Eagles and the Cowboys at 10 and 11 there. I just think that they did a good job of and I forgot it. Literally, how did I forget about the Commanders that were right above them? So they had 11, 10, 8, and 6. That's a division that just got that much better, and they already had a bunch of solid teams in there. So shout out the NFC East for having a fantastic draft. The NFC West could have done better, but the Rams and the Cardinals did a really good job of setting themselves up. Seahawks were solid draft as well, and then the 49ers were fine, right? They're in that range with the Bills, where they didn't have. I wouldn't call it a good draft. I wouldn't call it a bad draft. I think it was just fine. We talked about the Texans already. The Saints, we already talked about as well. So you'll notice that I haven't talked about 2 divisions yet, right? And it's the NFC North and the AFC East. I think they had the 2 worst drafts and I think the North was probably the worst, but I think they had the 2 worst drafts of the 8 divisions. When you look at the Patriots at 3-13, right? They had a good solid draft. The Bills at 2-8-8, that's also fine, right? The Dolphins at 2-7-5, fine. The Jets at 2-6-7, fine. Like they were just scrunched up at the bottom. Like they didn't fall out. They didn't bottom out. They didn't have anything super great. The North, on the other hand, ooh, doggy. So you have 320, which is 17th. So not quite top half, but you're in that middle fringe, right? You're in that middle, just good draft. Their second best draft was the Detroit Lions, which I had ranked as the 26th best draft in this class. That's awful. That is so bad. And then you get to the Vikings at 29 with a 2-2-5, and that's not the worst because the Bears had a 2-1-3, and they're in 31st. If you just took the average of those division scores, you're talking about somewhere in the 2-5s. If my quick math works. Let me do it real quick. Bang. Bang. Oh, then I already messed it up. My fat fingers. Sometimes I have. This isn't a podcast. What am I doing? It's okay. 5x4. It's a 2-5-4. So I was right on I was pretty close on the money. So that would overall rank them between the Colts and the Falcons if they were drafting as a division. So if you just took the averages of each division, they're by far the worst. They just didn't do a good job of taking players with value and then managing their assets. So it is what it is. But they'll still be, probably the best division of football this year. Wow, I can't believe it's really over. 8 episodes over the course of a month. Thank you to everybody that watched every single one. It is greatly appreciated. I really, would like to make this a full-time career. So anything you do that can help me achieve that would be awesome. But that'll do it for the NFL Draft Class Grading Series. Next up, I mentioned this in my last video. I'm going to shift my focus to college football, more specifically EA College Football 26. We just had the release or the trailer for that get released a couple of days ago. And so I'm going to shift my focus to making some content for that. Also talking about some ideas I have for college football. But other than that, I just, I really appreciate you guys going on this journey with me. Without further ado, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the flip. See ya.